The predator that preyed on stars, finally met Earth's hunters. Part 1. Commander stood on the bridge of his warship and watched the stars drift past the viewing screen. He had done this many times before. 200 worlds had fallen to his fleet. 200 species had screamed and begged and died. The Imperium had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years and was one of its greatest hunters. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world where they consumed everything. They ate the plants. They ate the animals. They ate each other when food grew scarce. When they reached the stars, they simply found more things to consume. Entire civilizations became their prey. They harvested populations for biological resources and stripped planets down to bare rock. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever truly tried. The scout ships had returned with their reports. A small yellow star sat ahead of them, orbited by 8 planets. The third planet held life. 11 billion creatures called themselves humans and lived on a world they named Earth. They had primitive, faster-than-light technology and moderate weapons. Standard prey. Nothing special. Clicked his claws together in satisfaction. His crew moved around him with practiced efficiency. They had done this so many times that it felt routine. Enter a system. Identify the dominant species. Send the harvester ships. Collect biological samples. Strip the planet. Move on to the next target. He gave the order to advance, and his fleet of 300 warships began moving toward the inner system. Far away on Earth, Admiral Grace received the detection report in her office. She read it twice, set down her coffee, and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Geneva carried on with its normal morning. People walked to work. Children went to school. None of them knew that humanity's greatest test had just arrived. Grace was 62 years old with gray hair and calm eyes. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. 30 years ago, humanity had discovered the remains of a dead civilization on a distant moon. The records they found told a terrible story. They had come and taken everything. The species had not even had time to fight back. Since then, Earth had prepared in secret. They studied every piece of information they could find about them. They analyzed their tactics, their technology, and their psychology. They built hidden fleets and concealed weapons platforms throughout the solar system. They trained soldiers for a war that might never come. Now it had come. Grace activated her communicator and spoke one word: nightfall. Within minutes, messages spread across the solar system. Hidden bases came alive. Disguised cargo ships revealed their true nature as warships. Soldiers who had trained for decades received their orders. She walked to the command center beneath the building where her staff waited. Lieutenant Danny Reeves looked up from his station as she entered. He was young, barely 30, with nervous energy in his movements. This would be his first real battle. "Admiral, the fleet is advancing through the outer system," he reported. 300 ships confirmed. They match the profiles from our historical data. Grace nodded and took her seat. "Good, let them come." Doctor joined them moments later. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent 20 years studying biology and behavior. She knew more about the enemy than anyone alive. "They will follow standard patterns," said. "Harvesters first to collect samples. Main fleet follows once they confirm the population is suitable for processing. They expect no resistance." "They will find some," Grace replied. Across the solar system, Captain Laura received her orders aboard the stealth frigate Silent Hunter. Her squadron of 12 ships had hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids for 3 months, waiting for this signal. She gathered her crew and told them simply that the hunt had begun. In the outer system, watched his harvester ships move ahead of the main fleet. They approached a small human mining station and demanded surrender. The humans inside transmitted confused messages asking what was happening. This was normal. Prey species always reacted with confusion at first. The harvesters docked with the station and soldiers moved inside. They found the humans huddled together in fear, standard behavior. They began collecting specimens for analysis. Felt a small satisfaction. This would be another easy conquest. The humans showed no signs of organized military response. Their communications were panicked and disorganized. They were exactly like every other species they had consumed. He ordered the main fleet to advance toward the 4th planet. His tactical officers had identified it as a staging point with several human colonies. They would harvest there next before moving to the main population center on the 3rd planet. What did not know was that the mining station had been evacuated weeks ago. The humans inside were volunteers who had agreed to play their role in a larger plan. Every signal they sent was designed to confirm expectations. Every piece of confusion was carefully scripted. Hidden sensor drones tracked every ship and transmitted data back to Earth. Human analysts mapped weapon placements, shield frequencies, and communication patterns. They learned more about the enemy in 1 hour than 30 years of studying old records had taught them. Admiral watched the data flow into her screens. She saw the fleet moving exactly as predicted. They followed their ancient patterns without deviation. They had conquered so many worlds that they had stopped adapting. Why change what always worked? "They are entering the asteroid belt," Danny reported. Grace leaned forward in her chair. "Signal all units. Prepare for Phase 1. Throughout the asteroid belt, human ships and weapons platforms powered up their systems. Thousands of locked onto targets. Missile tubes opened. Stealth frigates positioned themselves for ambush runs. Every human soldier checked their equipment one final time. Stood beside Grace and watched the tactical display. "They have never faced real opposition," she said quietly. "Their psychology cannot process the concept of prey fighting back. When we hit them, they will not understand what is happening." Grace nodded. "That is what we are counting on." On his bridge, received reports that harvester operations were proceeding normally. He relaxed his grip on his command chair and allowed himself to feel bored. This conquest would be no different from the others. Then the first round struck his forward escort ship and tore it in half. Alarms screamed across every vessel. Surged to his feet as more impacts registered on his tactical display. Ships were dying around him. Weapons fire came from everywhere and nowhere. The asteroids themselves seemed to be attacking his fleet. He roared orders at his crew, demanding information, demanding targets to shoot back at. But the humans had planned this moment for 30 years. They knew exactly where to strike and when to fade back into the darkness. The predator that preyed on stars had finally met something unexpected. It had met Earth's hunters. The predator that preyed on stars finally met Earth's hunters. Part 2. The first 10 minutes of battle cost 40 ships. Rounds punched through armor at impossible speeds. Missiles emerged from hidden launchers and struck engines before crews could react. Human stealth frigates appeared from inside asteroids, fired their weapons, and vanished again before targeting systems could lock on. Stood frozen on his bridge as damage reports flooded his screens. He had never experienced anything like this. 200 worlds had fallen to his fleet, and not one had managed to destroy a single ship before surrendering. Now his force bled vessels with every passing second. His tactical officer screamed that they could not identify the enemy positions. The humans attacked from too many directions at once. Every rock could hide a weapon. Every shadow could contain a ship. Captain Laura commanded the stealth frigate Silent Hunter from the center of the chaos. Her squadron wove through the asteroid field like ghosts, striking and retreating in perfect coordination. They had practiced these maneuvers for years. Every pilot knew their role. Every gunner knew their targets. She watched a cruiser explode on her screen and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. These creatures had consumed entire species. They had turned civilizations into resources. Now they would learn what happened when prey decided to bite back. On Earth, Admiral Grace monitored the battle through real-time data feeds. The first phase had succeeded beyond expectations. Losses mounted while human casualties remained minimal. The enemy fleet was confused and disorganized. Lieutenant Danny Reeves updated the tactical display as new information arrived. "They are attempting to form defensive positions," he reported. "Their formation is breaking apart as individual captains try to protect their own ships." Doctor studied the communication signals they had intercepted. "They are arguing with each other," she said with a thin smile. "Their command structure depends on central authority. Without clear orders from, subordinate commanders default to self-preservation." Grace nodded. This matched everything they had learned about psychology. Apex predators did not evolve to work together under pressure. They competed with each other. When the pack faced a real threat, that competition became a weakness. "Continue Phase 1, she ordered. "Keep them off balance." In the asteroid belt, finally regained enough composure to issue orders. He commanded his fleet to concentrate fire on any enemy position they could identify. His ships began targeting the asteroids themselves, blasting rock formations where weapons might hide. The tactics showed limited success. Some human platforms were destroyed, but for every one they killed, 3 more seemed to appear. The humans had spent decades fortifying this region of space. They had turned the asteroid belt into a killing ground. Sergeant Cole led a Marine squad through the corridors of a damaged harvester ship. His team had boarded during the chaos of battle, cutting through an airlock while the enemy crew focused on external threats. Now, they moved through alien hallways with weapons raised and hearts pounding. The ship smelled wrong. The air carried a bitter chemical scent that made human eyes water. Strange sounds echoed from distant sections. Had trained for this, but training never fully prepared anyone for the reality of alien combat. They encountered their first warrior at a corridor junction. The creature stood 3 meters tall with gray scaled skin and 4 arms ending in sharp claws. It roared and charged at them without hesitation. Opened fire. His squad joined him. They took multiple hits and kept coming. It grabbed one Marine and threw him against the wall before concentrated fire finally brought it down. Checked his fallen soldier, alive but injured. He ordered 2 Marines to carry the wounded man back toward the airlock while the rest continued forward. The boarding party pushed deeper into the ship. They killed 6 more warriors in brutal close-quarters combat. Human weapons proved effective, but the aliens were strong and fast and utterly fearless. Every encounter cost time and ammunition. They reached the bridge and found it defended by a dozen. The battle that followed lasted 3 minutes and left bodies on both sides. When it ended, stood among his surviving Marines and looked at the alien command center. "Get the cameras recording," he ordered. "Command wants the enemy to see this." One Marine activated the ship's internal communication system and linked it to a broadcast signal. Another began streaming footage back to the human fleet. Within minutes, every vessel in the system received images of humans standing victorious on the bridge of a harvester ship. Watched the broadcast with growing horror. He saw the human soldiers moving through his ship like predators. They did not flee or cower. They hunted his warriors through the corridors and killed them with systematic efficiency. Worse, they seemed to enjoy it. The image showed a human male speaking directly into the camera. His face was splattered with blood, but his voice remained calm and steady. He said something in his alien language that could not understand. The tone needed no translation. It was a challenge. Around, his crew watched the same footage. He saw something in their eyes that he had never witnessed before. Fear. His warriors were feeling actual fear. He shut off the broadcast and roared at his tactical officers to concentrate on the battle. But the damage was done. Word of the boarding action spread through the fleet faster than any order he could give. Warriors who had never faced real opposition now wondered if they were next. Admiral received confirmation that the psychological operation had succeeded. She moved to Phase 2. "All units fall back to secondary positions," she ordered. "Let them think they are winning." Throughout the asteroid belt, human ships began withdrawing. Weapons platforms went silent. They found themselves suddenly facing less resistance, seized the opportunity and ordered an advance toward the inner system. His fleet reformed around his flagship and pushed through the debris field. They had lost over 60 ships, but 200 remained, enough to crush any further opposition and harvest the human population. This prey had surprised him, but prey could not defeat a true predator. He did not know that the withdrawal was part of the plan. He did not know that every move his fleet made was being tracked and analyzed. He did not know that the humans were drawing him into an even more deadly trap. Laura watched from her hidden position as the fleet moved past her squadron. She smiled and began calculating her next attack run. The hunt was far from over. The predator that preyed on stars finally met Earth's hunters. Part 3. The fleet emerged from the asteroid belt with 200 ships still operational, felt a grim satisfaction despite his losses. He had pushed through the human trap and now had clear space ahead. The 4th planet lay before him, and beyond it, Earth itself. He ordered his damaged vessels to the rear and reformed his attack formation. The humans had proven more capable than expected, but they could not match firepower in open space. Without their asteroid cover, they would fall like every other species. Admiral Grace watched the enemy fleet advance on her tactical display. Everything was proceeding according to plan. They had taken the bait. Now came the difficult part. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered. Lieutenant Danny Reeves activated a system that had been built 20 years ago and never used. Communication arrays throughout the solar system began broadcasting on captured frequencies. The signals carried voices that made Freeze in shock. He heard the screams of dying species. He heard pleas for mercy in 100 alien languages. He heard the final transmissions of worlds his people had consumed over 3,000 years. The humans had collected these recordings from the wreckage of civilizations and now played them back for them to hear. "You killed them all," a synthetic voice said in the language. "Now they speak to you from beyond death. Now they demand justice." Cut the communication channel, but his crew had already heard. Every ship in his fleet had received the broadcast. Warriors who had never questioned their role as predators now heard the accumulated grief of their victims. Doctor had designed this psychological attack. She understood that psychology contained a fatal flaw. They had evolved as apex predators, which meant they had no natural mechanisms for processing guilt or shame. These emotions had been unnecessary on there, but that did not mean they were immune. It simply meant they had no defenses against such feelings when they arose. The voices of the dead affected minds in ways their evolution had not prepared them for. Some warriors became agitated and aggressive. Others grew quiet and withdrawn. Unit cohesion began to fracture as crews struggled with unfamiliar emotional responses. On the human flagship Endurance, Admiral moved to the next phase of her plan. "Show them who they are facing," she said. The broadcast shifted from voices of the dead to images of Earth. Not images of human cities or technology, but images of human history. They saw cave paintings of hunters tracking prey. They saw wolves being tamed by primitive humans. They saw lions falling to spears. They saw bears hunted for sport. A calm human voice explained what they were watching. "We evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill us. Predators hunted us from birth, so we became better hunters. We domesticated your kind of species. We made them our pets or drove them to extinction." The images showed human armies marching to war. They showed weapons growing more sophisticated across centuries. They showed mushroom clouds and orbital bombardments and weapons that could crack planets. "You think you are apex predators," the voice continued. "You are not. You are simply predators who never met anything more dangerous than yourselves, until now." Watched the broadcast with something cold settling in his stomach. He recognized the tone. It was not the desperate defiance of prey animals. It was the calm confidence of a superior predator explaining reality to a lesser species. His tactical officer reported that human ships were gathering ahead, not hiding or retreating, but forming attack formations. They were preparing to engage his fleet in open combat. "Impossible," muttered. "They cannot match our firepower in direct battle." But the humans were not fighting based on firepower alone. Captain Laura led her squadron in the first strike, targeting sensor arrays and communication relays. Her ships moved with precision that spoke of years of training and planning. Lieutenant Reeves coordinated the attack from the Endurance, feeding targeting data to every human vessel. The fleet worked as a single organism, each ship supporting the others in ways they had never encountered. Sergeant and his Marines launched a second boarding action, this time targeting a command ship. The footage of their assault spread through both fleets. Humans watched and felt pride, watched and felt that cold, unfamiliar sensation growing stronger. Realized something was fundamentally wrong. His species had dominated the galaxy because they were the perfect predators. They were stronger, faster, and more ruthless than any prey. But these humans did not act like prey. They acted like something worse. On Earth, explained it to Grace in simple terms. Evolved to hunt herbivores and omnivores. They consumed species that ran or hid or submitted. They have no genetic memory of facing a dedicated predator species because such competitors died out on their millions of years ago. And humans. Humans evolved alongside predators far more dangerous than themselves. You learned to track them, trap them, and kill them. Your entire species developed around the concept of hunting the hunters. Paused. They are about to discover what that means. The battle shifted as human tactics evolved in real time. Ships that broke formation were immediately targeted. Vessels that tried to flee found human frigates waiting in ambush. The predator fleet was being hunted. Ordered a full assault on the human flagship. If he could kill their command structure, perhaps his fleet could recover. His remaining cruisers concentrated their fire on the Endurance. Admiral did not flinch. All units execute Maneuver 7. The human fleet split apart and reformed around the attacking vessels. Suddenly, the hunters became the surrounded. Fire poured in from every direction. Ships exploded one after another as they found themselves trapped in a crossfire of their own creation. Watched his assault crumble. He had commanded 200 conquests, and in every one the prey had eventually broken and fled. These humans refused to break. They fought harder as the battle progressed. They adapted faster than his crews could respond. For the first time in his long career, considered the possibility that he might lose. The thought terrified him. The predator that preyed on stars finally met Earth's hunters. Part 4. Stood alone in his command chamber as the battle raged outside. His fleet had lost another 40 ships in the last hour. Human attacks came without pause or mercy. Every tactic he tried, they countered. Every formation he created, they dismantled. His subordinate commanders demanded guidance through the communication system. They wanted to know how to defeat an enemy that refused to behave like prey, had no answers to give them. He looked at his reflection in the darkened, 300 years old, veteran of 200 conquests, the greatest hunter of his generation. Now he faced something his entire species had forgotten how to fight. Admiral Grace watched the fleet fracture on her tactical display. Individual ships were beginning to act independently as their central command structure failed. Some pressed the attack with desperate aggression. Others pulled back and circled, unsure of what to do. Their coordination is collapsing, Lieutenant Danny Reeves reported. Multiple ships are broadcasting conflicting orders. Doctor nodded. Without strong central authority, default to individual survival instincts. They evolved as solitary predators who only cooperated under dominant leadership. Remove that leadership and the pack falls apart. Grace saw the opportunity. Captain, target their flagship's communication array, cut off from the rest of his fleet. Laura received the order aboard the Silent Hunter. Her squadron had been waiting for this moment, positioned behind the formation where they could strike at the flagship without interference. All ships follow my lead, she commanded. One pass, maximum firepower, then scatter. The 12 stealth frigates accelerated out of their hiding positions. They moved through the chaotic battle space like shadows, avoiding the main engagements. Sensors struggled to track them against the background radiation of destroyed ships and expanding debris fields. Silent Hunter reached optimal firing range and opened up with every weapon it carried. The other frigates joined seconds later. Concentrated fire struck the flagship's communication tower and turned it into molten slag. Felt his ship shudder from the impacts. Alarms screamed warnings about communication system failure. He tried to broadcast orders to his fleet and received only static in return. He roared in frustration and ordered his bridge crew to restore communications. They worked frantically but reported that the damage was too severe. External arrays had been completely destroyed. The flagship could receive signals but could not transmit. Throughout the fleet, captains waited for guidance that never came. Some assumed had been killed and began acting on their own authority. Others tried to reach the flagship and grew confused when they received no response. The humans exploited the chaos instantly. Admiral broadcast a message on all frequencies that receivers could detect. "Your commander has abandoned you," her voice announced. "Your fleet is dying. You came here as predators, but you will leave as prey. This is what happens when you hunt humans." Some captains refused to believe it. They pressed their attacks with renewed fury, determined to prove human words wrong. Human ships met them head-on and destroyed them without mercy. Other captains looked at their tactical displays and saw the truth. Over 100 ships had been lost. The humans showed no signs of weakening. Every minute brought more deaths and more human victories. One by one, ships began turning away from the battle, not retreating in formation as doctrine demanded, but fleeing individually in whatever direction seemed safest. The pack was breaking. Watched his fleet scatter from his isolated command chamber. He felt something he had no word for in his language. The closest translation might be despair, but even that failed to capture the depth of what he experienced. His species had ruled the galaxy through fear. They had consumed civilizations because no one could stop them. Now, he witnessed the end of that dominance in real time as his warriors fled from creatures they had expected to harvest like livestock. Sergeant's Marines captured another vessel and broadcast footage of the surrender. Warriors knelt before human soldiers and submitted to capture rather than fight to the death. This image spread faster than any other because it showed something no had ever seen. It showed their kind giving up. Admiral ordered pursuit of the fleeing vessels but kept most of her fleet near Earth. Some might try a desperate attack on the human. She would not leave it undefended. "Let them run," she said quietly. "Let them carry the story back to their empire. Let every know what happened here." Watch the tactical display with an expression of grim satisfaction. Their psychology will never recover from this. Who witness humans fighting will carry that experience forever. They will pass it to their offspring through genetic memory. 1,000 generations from now will still fear humans. Danny Reeves updated his casualty reports. Human losses remained remarkably light compared to the enemy. The decades of preparation had paid off beyond all projections. On the crippled flagship made a decision. He could not save his fleet, but he might save himself. He ordered his bridge crew to activate emergency engines and flee toward the outer system. The flagship limped away from the battle zone. Human ships detected the movement but made no serious attempt to stop it. Admiral wanted survivors. She wanted witnesses who would return to space and tell everyone what they had seen. Watched Earth grow smaller on his. He had come here expecting an easy harvest. He left as a broken commander fleeing from prey that had proven to be the deadliest predators the galaxy had ever produced. Behind him, the remnants of his once mighty fleet scattered across the solar system. Some would escape, most would not. The battle was effectively over, and they had lost completely. The predator that preyed on stars had finally met something it could not consume. It had met Earth's hunters, and it had learned fear. The predator that preyed on stars finally met Earth's hunters. Part 5. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Grace stood in the observation deck of the Endurance and watched repair crews work on damaged ships. The solar system was quiet now. Wreckage drifted through space alongside the remains of human vessels that had given everything in the fight. The final count showed that humanity had destroyed or captured over 200 warships. Fewer than 50 had escaped, including the crippled flagship carrying. Human losses totaled 37 ships and just under 2,000 lives. Those numbers would have seemed impossible a week ago. They had conquered hundreds of civilizations without losing a single major battle. Now they had been broken by a species they had classified as standard prey. Lieutenant Danny Reeves found the Admiral staring out at the stars. He carried a with communication logs from across the galaxy. "We are receiving transmissions from everywhere," he reported. "Species we have never contacted before are reaching out. They want to know if the battle footage is real." Grace nodded slowly. "Tell them it is real. Tell them they can be beaten." The news had spread faster than anyone anticipated. Hidden civilizations that had spent centuries avoiding attention suddenly emerged from their hiding places. They wanted to know how humans had accomplished what no other species had managed. Ambassador Shaw had not slept in 2 days. His staff worked continuously to handle the flood of diplomatic communications. Every message carried the same desperate hope. If humans could defeat perhaps the galaxy could finally be free. Doctor studied the captured prisoners in a secure facility on Mars. She ran tests and conducted interviews through translation software. What she learned confirmed her theories about psychology. The prisoners could not look human guards in the eyes. They flinched at sudden movements. Some had stopped eating and refused to speak. Their minds had been fundamentally broken by an experience their evolution had not prepared them for. They genuinely believed they were the apex predators of the galaxy, explained to Grace during a briefing. That belief was central to their identity. Now they have met something that hunted them like animals. Their brains cannot process this reality. Will they recover? Some might adapt over time. Others will remain in this state permanently. But the important thing is what happens when they return to space. Pulled up psychological projections on her screen. They will spread this trauma to their entire civilization. Who never fought humans will develop fear responses based on stories alone. We have not just won a battle, we have planted terror in their collective consciousness. Captain Laura received a promotion and command of a new squadron designated for offensive operations. Her mission was to identify vulnerable positions and begin systematic raids. The hunters were becoming the hunted across the galaxy. Sergeant Cole wrote the first draft of what would become the standard manual for anti-tactics. His experience from the boarding actions provided insights that would save countless lives in future engagements. He trained the next generation of Marines with one simple principle: they only understand strength. Show them weakness, and they attack. Show them that you are more dangerous than they are, and they break. 2 weeks after the battle, reached space in his damaged flagship. He reported to the High Council and told them what had happened. The other commanders did not believe him at first. No prey species had ever defeated a fleet. It was simply not possible. Then they watched the battle footage. The High Council chamber fell silent as images played on massive screens. They saw their ships exploding. They saw their warriors fleeing. They saw humans standing over prisoners with calm, confident expressions. One council member demanded to know how this had happened, told them the truth. "We have always believed ourselves the ultimate predators," he said. "We consumed every species we encountered because none of them could resist. But these humans evolved differently. They did not survive by running or hiding. They survived by killing everything that threatened them." He pulled up images from the human broadcast: wolves serving human masters, lions dead at human feet, weapons capable of destroying worlds. "They do not see us as threats," continued. "They see us as prey they have not yet bothered to hunt. When we entered their system, we gave them a reason to hunt us, and they proved that they are better hunters than we have ever been." The council debated for hours. Some demanded immediate retaliation with larger fleets. Others argued for caution. A few suggested that they might need to learn a new approach to the galaxy. That debate was still ongoing when the first reports arrived of human ships appearing in controlled systems. They were not attacking yet. They were watching, mapping, learning. The hunters had begun to stalk their prey. On Earth, Grace reviewed the first joint defense proposals from newly contacted species. Dozens of civilizations wanted to form alliances with humanity. They offered resources, technology, and military support in exchange for protection against aggression. Danny Reeves had been promoted to commander and assigned to coordinate the new coalition fleet. He worked alongside alien officers who looked at humans with something close to worship. They had never met a species that fought predators and won. Grace looked at a star map marked with territory. Thousands of systems, billions of warriors. The Empire had existed for 3,000 years and would not fall easily. But it would fall. She smiled and began planning the next phase. Humanity had not fought this battle just to defend Earth. They had fought it to announce their arrival on the galactic stage. They had spent as the hunters. Now they would learn what it felt like to be prey. Far away, in the depths of space, sat alone in his quarters and waited for the inevitable. The humans would come eventually. They would bring their fleets and their weapons and their terrible patience. They would hunt his people the way his people had hunted so many others. He had seen the look in human eyes during the battle. They had not fought out of desperation or fear. They had fought because they enjoyed it, because hunting was what they did best. The predator that preyed on stars had finally met its match. And the galaxy would never be the same.